Welcome to ALC. Welcome to Sensational Sundays.
ALC Global.
And it's going to call for a different way of looking at things. So we are in such a shift right now that I am not, well, I shouldn't say not quite sure. I am sure that we cannot do things normal or as usual. So I have been shifting, and I have known what was always wrong with me. I didn't think I was depressed, but I could tell that there were things that were going on inside of my spirit. And so I locked myself away, and of all the things to study, I had to go back into studying American history as well as the history of Christianity. And I said American history, I didn't say the American myth. There's a difference of the American myth that are taught to us in school. And I know I have my teachers here, and I may have history teachers, but there's a difference between the American myth and American history. Because true American history is found there, we just don't look for it. So I had to go back because of something that I've always known and something that I've always taught and discovered. So before I go into it, I'm going to talk about, well, I'm going to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to talk about twisted history, twisted Christianity, and untwisting our lives. I'm going to talk about these things. But I first of all want you to take your arms, your hands, put them to your side, and just let them go. A little limp. There you go. All right, there you go. And I want you to imagine that your palms are a point of release. Everything that's been pent up inside of you, your stress. Let it go. The stress that has been causing inflammation, just let it go. Stress that has been causing that inflammation into that thing they call arthur or arthritis, let it go. Things that you were holding on to, places where you were wounded, where you were hurt, places where you were damaged, let it go. For the next period of time, for the next 35, 40 minutes, we're going into another space, another world. Yesterday does not matter now. Last week does not matter now. Tomorrow does not matter. All that matters is right now. And this is where your healing is. Now flip those hands over, place them up like this, whether you're laying them on your knees or wherever you are, and just open up your palms now to receive. Take a deep breath, release it. Now take a normal breath, release it. And now just to take a normal breath, hold it for about 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. I know some of you can't hold it anymore, so let it go. Right. Let it go. Now take one more breath and then let it go. There we go. It's all right. Those lungs are coming alive. That's all right. That's what's happening. You are in a session. You are not in a sermon. You are in a session. There is healing here. There is the future here. And I'm going to be your guide on this trail just for a few moments. We are now in the month of June. We are in the 6th month. We are halfway into this year of 2024, 2024, which equals the totality of number 8. 8 is the number of new beginnings, or the beginning of new beginnings. We are in 6, which is also a number of the human flesh, or the number of man. Where we are now is the completion or the expansion of structure. We now have to begin to use this moment. What's happening now is we must be able to look back. We have to look back and look at our lives and ask ourselves the question, what have I learned this year? What have I learned from the hurt? What have I learned from the pain? What have I learned from the betrayals? Am I bitter or am I better? If I am still bitter, then you've got to ask yourself the question, why am I bitter, still bitter now? Who hurt you? Did you keep them around or did you let them go? Are you trusting them to be better people than what they were to you earlier? And have you still allowed them to be walking around at the same level of your life and in the same area of your brain? Did you fall in love and the other one did not fall in love? Were both of you supposedly in love, but some of the love seems to have waned, the fire seems to have lessened in one than the other? Or maybe it's just the way you see it. Has there been a heartbreak? Have you learned a vital lesson about something? This is the moment you must look back now. When you go home this week, this becomes your homework, is to take quiet moments and allow the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God, the present Spirit of God that is in you, to take you back and take you on a tour of what has transpired. Now, some of you may say, well, we're not supposed to look back, forgetting those things which are behind us. Well, they're not quite, it's all right to, you have to look back to forget or to move forward. You got to look back to see. You have to look back into the rearview mirror before you change lanes. You don't just change lanes. Well, I don't look back at nothing. I don't just, and then you just move your car over there. I see a bunch of those people all the time. You look in the side mirror. You look in the rear view mirror. You look on the side mirrors. You have to take a glance. I didn't say keep your eye on it or you're going to crash into something in front of you. But you have to take a glance at it. You have to pull your telescope back. You got to look back and see what were these things that may have altered my life and are keeping me from going forward. What are these things that may have caused baggage inside of me? Because I can't carry this into the world that we're about to enter. The world we're about to enter is going to be a tough world. And in order to understand it, we must, I have had to go back. We study. Most people think that preachers or people, when I say preachers, that what we do is, we study the text and we pray and ask the Holy Ghost to give us a message or a word. It's a whole lot more involved than that. A whole lot more involved than that, especially because of one thing, because I am talking to intelligent people. Okay? All right. So I don't bring no junk to this space here, what they call that sacred space or that holy ground. So you have to study to show thyself approved. You study to, in other words, you have to study in order to show thyself approved by who? The people that you have studied for. So, when I stand here, as I go back, and these things become templates, American history becomes a template. I have to look back at that history. Christianity at the history, at its inception. What was it? Why was it the way it was? And then I have to take the current charts of today to look at the newspapers of today, the news of today, the chatter of today, and now the social medias of today. And I must bring these two charts together, although as I'm studying various charts and templates and things, and I understand something. I understand that what was in the past has now become the future. And when I translate and put one over the other, I'm beginning to see a pattern. And when I see patterns, then the seer within me begins to open up. And because that is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for orbits. I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for something that goes around and then goes around again and then goes around again. When I look at the stars, the scriptures talk about in Genesis 1:1 that the stars and that the heavens are signs for us. And so, what those signs mean is not that we're guiding our lives by planets and stars, but the orbits go back around and come around again. In other words, there are patterns to these things. And through these patterns, they learned in ancient days how to plant corn and wheat, when to plant, when spring was coming, when something was about, when the earth was about to turn, when the ground would be fallow, or the ground would be ready enough to accept seed. They understood that because of the patterns. So we look at patterns of life, and so do I. And I made no quick decision because when I saw a pattern this week, and one of the patterns that I looked at was the trial, or was that trial of the former president. Now, please understand, I'm not going on a tirade on the former president, because you must understand that as a seer, the former president is not in my purview. The former president is meaningless to me as a seer. The former president is merely a puppet of things that are moving in spiritual realms. And to get caught up too much in the former president himself, thinking that if he's removed or if he's convicted, it wouldn't matter. You've already learned. We're learning patterns. A former president can be convicted in the United States of America and raise $34 million in one day. And the majority of the people who backed that money are Christians. There is a pattern. So when there is a pattern, I have to ask myself, what Christianity, in other words, where's the Christianity? So I search for the Christianity, and I cannot find the actual pattern of true Christianity, which is the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. So I have to search for a cultic Christianity, an abscess of Christianity, a flip or a turn in history of Christianity that some have believed to be Christianity and now keep it as Christianity, and have also taken on another Christ. that some of even people of color are still sitting there and have not lost the scales like the Apostle Paul from their eyes. They cannot see, but I have no time for them because I'm dealing with patterns right now. So I have to go back, not only in American history, but Christian history, as well as Black history or African American history, even before the interruption of enslavement. I've got to go back into the spirituality of our people and begin to connect the dots. What am I seeing? And the pattern of American history is really very simple. We are exactly where we should be in America. Huh? What you're seeing is exactly where America has been headed from the beginning. From the day Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, when Thomas Jefferson wrote, who was of course a slave owner, all of them were, but when Thomas Jefferson wrote a paragraph that at least said, let's remove slavery from our country. And it was supposed to be the final, it was the largest paragraph in the Declaration of Independence that was submitted on July 2nd. The rest of Congress took the paragraph out and said, we will deal with that later, because the Southern planters, whose currency was slavery, could not handle that. You must understand that enslavement was not about they don't like black people. It was about money. It is about currency. It is about the movements and flows of wealth. Which is why we said, well, why did preacher got to talk about money? Because you need me to talk about money. You only get upset at the preacher when he talks about giving money. But you love to talk about money. You think money comes from there, money comes from there, but money comes from here. Money has always come from here, but you've been taught that money does not come from here. Why? How did you switch from history to money? I know I'm not supposed to be interrupting right here, but remember, myalc.org. That's myalc.org. And you can also give at 713-742-2035. You can use your text to give or use your app. If you're on the app, you can go right to that donate button and it won't change anything. You say, why in the world would you break my concentration? I'm sorry, but I wanted you to remember, because you know what? Just like there's a break in here, there's also going to be a breakthrough in your life. I believe that. Now, let's go back. Because when the former president was convicted, Wall Street took a dip. The stock market. Why is the stock market moving at the conviction of a former president? And why is it dropping? And then when you move to the bottom fold of the Wall Street Journal, you notice, and it says that the number one billionaires have decided to shift their money to Trump. So now the money of America is behind the former president. Not the millionaires, the billionaires. And you must understand something about billionaires. They want access, not profit. They have profit. What they want is access and photo ops. They want access into the levers of power. But what you must understand about the levers of power is while we are upset at the former president, we don't understand he is merely the wizard. The wizard on the screen with the fire coming out, telling Dorothy and the scarecrows to go get the witch's broom. Till finally Toto pulls the cover back and we find out there is a man behind the curtain. There are men behind this curtain. And these men have a different America than what you think it is. From its foundation, America was we the people, but we the people were white men, aristocracy, and the exclusion of white women, slaves, and other people of other colors. From the very beginning in 1619, when the boat or the first 20 slaves hit America, they all became, there were enslaved Africans, there were indentured Irish and English, and there were the planter groups. They all began to ally together so that they could live and eat. They even intermarried. But the white Euro-Christian identity says we cannot make money as long as they are together. We must separate them. And so the institution of laws that made a difference between black and white and created whiteness, not white people, whiteness. Even the French were not white. The Spanish were not white. The Portuguese were not white. It was only the Eurocentric. It was a certain look upon the skin that they considered whiteness. But then it became this construct. This is how the money was made. And so you had a permanent class, and as long as you can have someone who feels that whiteness is the epitome of everything, then you will always have those who are trying to grab it. If they can grab it, how do they grab it? By moving toward it. And no matter what the color of their skin, if they can at least rub shoulders with this, they feel they can get a leg up. But there is something higher than them. It is religion that keeps us quiet, keeps us docile. When you look at what we're doing here and the space that we're in, this is not abnormal. This is actually normal. It is normal to be in a space that is not the space of a church building. Black people in the beginning never did that. They met where they could. They had the ability in their prayers to pick and choose their own praying grounds. People of color had the ability to have church, not just go to church. They made, well, we going to church, but when they leave, they said, we sure had church, and we now going home. But before then, church and another institution, the school or education, were actually one in the same. The same seats you had church on, they moved them around for school. And after school was over, they changed them around for church. So church and school, spirituality and education were one. Spirituality without education will get you into occultism. Education without spirituality will become dead and cold. You see it out there now. People can take you into any place they want to. They can take your Christianity and make you think you are doing God's will. I'm different. I was in an HBCU for ministerial school, so I'm a little different. And I say that because I think differently. I had to go to chapel every day. As ministers, I hated it. We was all of us was up all night long. We in college, we up all night long. Well, you're a ministerial student. We're still up all night long. And then you got to go in your pajama bottom, whatever you got to get to chapel, because if you didn't, they wouldn't let you get your grades. Couldn't get your semester done. So you had to go to chapel. The other students could go maybe twice a week. We had to go every single day. Then had to go to somebody's church on Sunday. Now, so we think differently. But in your normal evangelical schools, they're teaching something in church. And here's what they're teaching. They're teaching that we are at war. At war against who? And so we sing, onward Christian soldiers, marching as to war. War with who? The enemies of Christ. Who are the enemies of Christ? And it is taught that in the last days, we as Christian soldiers will have to take up arms against the enemies of Christ. Who are the enemies of Christ? The sinner. Who is the sinner? But if you can get into the back rooms, they're saying we're losing our country. We must be ready to fight the enemies of Christ. Who are the enemies of Christ? Them. Them who? They. They, who are they? We black folk, we don't know who they is. We going out trying to get the prostitute saved or the wino on the corner saved. But I come from a church where there's black people in there. So when I go to church, the wino sitting over there and the prostitute sitting over there. And really, we don't consider her a prostitute. She's just trying to feed her 5 kids. See, so the woman out in the street and the school teacher sitting next to each other praising the Lord. See, because to us it is community. We go to Eurocentric institutions and they say you got to take tracts and go preach on the street and then go out there and preach to the unsaved. Who are the unsaved? The other folk. Them. Who are them? Then when you finally get into the back rooms and find out, you find that the other are people who are not like us. What does not like us mean? You mean no Christianity? No, not like us. So why are you tolerating me? Because you're like us. How can I be like you and my brother and sister is not like? No, I think I'd rather be with the wino on the corner than to be with your twisted Christianity. Because if you cannot see the value of them, you cannot see the value of me. So now we're in a different scenario. You cannot become more spiritual, if you do not expand your education. Spirituality needs a framework to hang itself on. Education is waiting for the new wine, so the education does not be just something that was taught about the past, but points toward the future. It inspires you, it vibrates you, it's an education that makes you move and be excited about tomorrow, because you know what you've learned about the past can become part of what's tomorrow. When they got off that boat at 16, 19, when that was changed, What happened in 1692, America become so paranoid about fighting after them that they began to turn on their own women. And their own women, they had begun to call them witches. And the foundation of where the founding fathers were out of Boston, Massachusetts in 1992 and 93 were the famous Salem witch trials, where they had persecuted over 39 of their women and 19 were hanged as witches because they believed that the devil had gotten into them. And when they asked what the devil was, they said the devil was a little black imp that seeped through people's doors. When they had to hang King George in effigy, where you see that picture in history of this scarecrow body hanging and the feathers coming out that you teach in school about the hanging of King George when they were getting ready to go into the Revolutionary War. Look closely, because the face of King George is black, because they considered that as other. Because you see, there were blacks who were standing back during the Revolutionary War saying, now who do we fight for? None of y'all care anything about us. So who do we fight for? Who is going to give us our freedom? That's what black people saw. And the revolutionists were afraid of that. So they pushed that slavery agenda aside again. And they keep pushing it aside and aside and aside till now we get to today. And we look across this country, and I lay my template down because I'm saying, why don't we vote these people out of office? And the question and the answer is coming back, and it's scaring the living daylights out of me. Because when you go down the street and you talk to people and ask them, why don't you vote? And they say, what difference does it make? They have been people of color have been standing on the sides saying, it has not mattered to us. What difference does it make? And you know what? I kind of agree with them. But the other part of me said, but I can't stop. What difference does it make? And we are setting up and looking at a government to where billionaires, senators, congresspeople have moved to support the agenda. The Supreme Court have moved. How in the world can we, who are only between 14 to 16% of America, and we're not even sure that the Latino community is going to stand with all of us? What are we going to do? How do we survive this? Now, don't get me wrong. It does not mean that the entire world will come to an end. It just means that the world we have known comes to an end. And it will be harder to flip the thing once the thing takes place. Things called 2025, the plans for the future of America, all of these things are now in play. And I see the charts, and the words are lining up. The paths are lining up. The stars are lining up. Oh my God. So what in the world do we do? Number one, and I'm leaving this at number one. You are going to need to make changes in your life like never before. And I'm going to tell you something that sounds totally against what I have been teaching for 40 years. It will sound like it's against it. It's not, but it'll sound like it. Number one, lower your expectations. Hear me carefully. I know what Hebrews 11 says. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for. The word hope is defined as expectation. Faith is the substance of things. If you don't have high expectations, then you won't have high faith. Faith is not a commodity, we've now learned. Faith is trust. Faith is following. Faith is so trust does not come from high expectations. It comes from expectations. And I said, okay, low expectations. If I tell them low expectations, they're going to think I've been teaching them wrong. But no, I haven't. We do a thing, I did something several years ago called the ABCs of Living. And one of the things that I deal with is inside of it, and even marriage classes. Brother Jetty, and they've worked on it. Our marriage classes, the number one thing that we deal with in marriage, I haven't dealt with in a long time, is conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is about, the first thing is to drop your expectations. We go into marriage and go into relationships, and we go there, money matters, all these things, and we have unmet expectations because we are expecting greater interest. We're expecting to beat the market. You can't beat the market. The best of them cannot beat the market. I know people telling you you can daily trade and beat the market. You cannot beat the market. There's only one way to beat the market. And I'm not telling you this. I'm going behind my paywall and tell you. But you must, if unmet expectations is because you have expectations and you have not go into a relationship, you expect her to be this, you expect him to be this, and you haven't said anything to him or her. You come together, you meet somebody, you haven't sat down and had to talk with them. What you expect, what you don't expect. Because you're afraid if you tell them what you expect, they're gone. I don't blame you. I wouldn't tell them either till later on. And they're unmet. In other words, so you live life, you live together, walking beside each other, holding hands, making love, all these different things, and you ain't told nobody what you expect until one day you blow up at them and you find out you ain't told them that you expected them to be this way. And they're not that way because maybe they can't be that way. But you should have lowered maybe the expectation. They say in marriage, lower the expectation. Don't expect him to do anything for you. Don't expect her to do anything for you. So when they do something for you, you're saying, oh my God. Oh, I'm so surprised. Because you didn't expect nothing. Sandra and I used to play those games all the time. Okay, I don't expect none from you. I don't expect none from you either. Then I would do something she didn't expect, and she was just surprised. So here's my point. Begin to drop your expectations concerning the world that you are in. You cannot save the world. You can only possibly save the world that you are within. Your world. Can't say that word. Number one. Number two, they're not going to receive the Jesus that you have to give them. So ain't no need of you standing up there preaching, thinking that your preaching is going to save them or make them put their guns down. They're not going to put the guns down. Drop your expectations. Number three, they're not going to find Jesus because the Jesus that you're selling is not the Jesus that they want. They already have their Jesus, and their Jesus does not look like your Jesus. And number four, they have an agenda. And the agenda that they have, they are now willing to die for. They have now put all the cards on the table. All the money is in the pot. Everything has been pushed to the center in this poker game. Somebody's going to have a better hand. Somebody's going to win and lose and win everything or lose everything. They are now senators, Congress people, politicians are now opening up and telling you who they are. Believe it, baby. Believe who they are. They are telling you who they are. And they are telling you what they will do to you when they win. So it's now time for you to make a change in you. You understand it? I got you. I'm done. Amen.
Let me break in here for a second. I want to tell you a little secret. There is something I used to do. It was commodity trading. And they used to have something on the list called winter wheat. I never knew what it was, never paid any attention to it because in my northern background, all I saw in the winter was hard ground, snow. How could anything thing grow? Well, I learned different. I learned that winter wheat was something that was planted around the fall, around September, October. And when it was planted, they didn't just throw the seed out there on the ground. Of course, it would be too hard. But they drilled down into the earth and almost like planted them one by one. Now, when the snow came and the winter came, it would go dormant. But when the spring came, it would come up again. And they would harvest it around that time. Winter wheat. In other words, there are things in our lives that we plant in times when people think they won't grow. There's a number 9 that I believe symbolizes finality. It symbolizes harvest. It symbolizes the end of something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10, you start all over again. This is 2024. 2, 2, 4 equals 8, new beginnings. But watch this. You can plant during the new beginnings, but you can't eat the harvest until later. When you plant something, it takes time. Sometimes it's dormant. Sometimes there's a winter. Sometimes you feel like everything is shut down, just like the earth is shut down in the winter. But you know what? Spring is coming. A different kind of growth is about to take place. So what you thought was not going to happen is going to happen. It's a seed that you plant in the earth. The seed and the need. The need is in the seed, and the seed is in the need. So whatever it is that you need, and whatever needs you see around you, plant it. It might be $9.90. It might be, for those of you who have it, and people have it, it might be $90.90, or it might be $99.90, whatever. Put a 9 in that offering. It might just be $9. Whatever it is, take the time. Plant it now. You can call the number, you can text to give. People love it. 713-742-2035. That's 713-742-2035. Or you can go to myalc.org. I love myalc.org. It's safe, it's secure. And you can hit that donate button, smash it, crash it, hit it. Let it be known that you're there. And you will see how to do it. Look, there are a lot of needs around in this world. There's going to be a lot of issues coming up. It's going to look like everything is lying dormant. But remember, if you put your seed in the ground, it's already coming up while you're not thinking about it. In the wintertime, it's not the heat from the sun outside that will grow this seed. Guess what? It's going to be the warmth of the sun inside that will make this seed come to life. It's going to be a warmth, like warm oil inside of you. Give, you'll feel it, and it will make a difference not only in the lives of others, but also in your life. All right? We love you. Stay blessed.